There are basically two ways to solve this problem. We can use the polymorphism principle, and that brings us to the strategy pattern, or we can use inheritance. So let's see how polymorphism works here. We can introduce a class called task executor with a single execute method. This is where we define that common behavior for executing tasks. So this is where we call auditTrail.record. Now here we have an interface called task with a single execute method, and we have concrete implementations of the task interface. Now, in the execute method of the task executor, we simply call task.execute, and task is a parameter that we have added to this method. So we are delegating or forwarding the execution of a task to a task object. This is the strategy pattern, okay? Now we can solve this problem using inheritance. So here are our two task classes, transfer money and generate report. These two classes have something in common, right? So we can have them extend a common base class called task. And then we move that common behavior over here. So this is where we're going to call auditTrail.record. Now, what happens after will be dependent on the type of task. At this point, when we are inside the task class, we have no idea. This will be determined later on when we extend this class, right? So to solve this problem, we can introduce an abstract method here called doExecute, and then call it over here. So even though it's an abstract method, it doesn't have implementation, we can call it here. We can call it in the execute method. So we have an abstract method in this class, and that means we should declare this class as abstract as well, which means we cannot instantiate it directly. We can only extend it. So we'll create two classes like transfer money and generate report, and have these classes override or implement this abstract doExecute method. So this is where we're going to have the logic for transferring money. What we have here is called the template method pattern, because our execute method defines a template or a skeleton for an operation. And here's the structure that is represented in the Gang of 4 book. So we have an abstract class with a template method and a bunch of primitive operations that are abstract. So we can have multiple abstract methods that are called by the template method. Now we can have a concrete class that extends this abstract class and overrides or implements these primitive operations. And by the way, we don't necessarily need to make these methods abstract. We can give them a default implementation and leave it up to the subclasses to determine if they want to override those methods or not. In that case, we refer to these methods as hooks. So these are hook operations. This is a very common technique that you will see in a lot of frameworks out there. Whether you're programming in Java or JavaScript or C#, hook methods are very common. Next, I'm going to show you how to implement this pattern.